All right. Hey folks, I'm here with Mary Smith from Gettysburg College. And for those who don't know, I am actually a alum from this school, so it holds a very dear spot in my heart. All right, and I'm gonna kick it over to Mary to speak about the school.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Wright. It is really nice to present with a fellow Gettysburgian, as we call ourselves. I'm actually class of 2000 from Gettysburg myself. So a few more years in, I'm curious, Mr. Wright, what was your major when you were at Gettysburg?
I majored in history and German.
Awesome, awesome. And didn't you study abroad as well?
Yes, I studied for a whole semester in the southwestern corner of 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 uh, of Germany.
Absolutely. I think I remember seeing when we were first having conversations about you being at both Huntington and Southern Huntington, that you had done your study abroad experience. That is my own regret from my own Gettysburg experience. I did not study abroad, but so many of our students do. So I love seeing all the coming from Europe and Australia and everywhere students have been. But for those joining our recording, as I said, Mary Smith, I'm also one of the senior associate directors from the admissions office, and I work with your school. So if you have questions about anything Gettysburg, you have me as a point of contact. So please, by all means, use me as a reference. It can be about Gettysburg or just simply the college piece in general. You have a great advocate in Mr. Wright, as he's been through this whole process and obviously knows Gettysburg well, but you also have us on the college side too as resources. What we thought we'd do for this session, for this Gettysburg session, is just kind of give some of the highlights, if you will, about Gettysburg. If I was meeting with you in person, I would be asking you a lot about yourself and your interests, because we want to make sure we're answering your questions. But for the sake of this session, we're just going to give you sort of the high level perspective, if you will. So I'll share my screen. And Mr. Wright, if you can give me a thumbs up, if that looks okay. Awesome. So this is who I am. If you're joining this recording, feel free to hover over that link. That will give you some additional information and give us some additional information on you, but that's also my contact information. So with that being said, I always like starting with a picture because Gettysburg College, our college campus, is absolutely beautiful. Frankly, your area is one of my favorite areas to visit because it is also a beautiful location. But Gettysburg is perhaps a little flatter, I should say. We're about 200 acres in South Central Pennsylvania, depending on how fast you drive, probably about an hour to an hour and a half from you. And we are located adjacent to that historic battlefield, the Battle of Gettysburg. Yes, a lot of that going on in terms of that sense of history and sense of place. But surprisingly, actually, most students don't come to Gettysburg to study history. It is definitely one of our popular majors, but we have students with so many different interests. I like to think about it more in the context of that historical setting. You know, we're a world famous town. We get about 3 million visitors to the area every year. Not your typical college town. So right off the bat, that is something that makes Gettysburg College pretty unique in that you get this kind of nice small town charm, great community, but at the same time, lots of restaurants, lots of shops, lots of things to do because we cater also to a visitor population. And again, if you're not familiar with our location, here's a great map. My favorite place, city, if you will, to go to over weekends and different things like that is usually Baltimore. I'm a lover of the arts. Fine and performing arts is definitely my area. So I love going to DC's Kennedy Center and visiting the Smithsonian's. But Baltimore holds a special place in my heart with all the different performing arts opportunities there as well. And of course, you know, we're close to Harrisburg, our state capital, which is ironically not on this map, but we're 45 minutes from the state capital. So that location is key for us when we start talking about career-related immersion experiences, hands-on opportunities. Because we're so close to these major hub cities, we're able to offer a lot with alumni, with parents, with friends of the college, both in the town of Gettysburg, but also related experiences in DC, in Baltimore, in Harrisburg. Okay, high level, big picture academics. So I promise I won't bore you with lots of slides. I think I have about 3 or 4 left in this presentation, but this gives sort of the highest level in terms of who we are as an institution. Gettysburg College is a college of the liberal arts and sciences. Now, what does that mean? Mr. Wright, I'm actually going to ask you that question because I get that question all the time. What's a liberal arts college? What exactly does that mean? What does it mean to you?
So what it means to me is, from my experience in college, I received, I would say, a wider than average kind of base of academic like topics. So I took a course in econ, in anthropology. I had my science classes. I had a math class that was all about like voting logic and finances and lots of cool things that I think once you graduate college, I think you really appreciate the fact that you have learned more things than were just your majors. It makes you a more well-rounded person. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. That well-rounded person, that the ability to critically think, to reflect in action, to solve problems, because you're exposed to not only the depth of your major, your course of study. So for example, I was a business major. I was business management. So I went in depth with economics, with statistics, with business communications, with strategic management. We went in depth with all of that, but I still got the breadth of both my major within the context of the sciences, the social sciences, the fine and performing arts, because frankly, that's our world today. It's not just, oh, I majored in business or I majored in history. It's how did you apply it? How did you apply it to your potential job, your career path? How did you relate the subjects? And how did that make you, as you said, that more well-rounded person? What's also interesting to me is for a lot of students coming into Gettysburg, they have several different interests and they're exploring, and they're able to do that in the liberal arts setting without giving anything up. Again, I studied business, but I also studied music. That was actually why I chose Gettysburg initially, was for the music program. And I also studied education because I love working with students. So I did a 1, 2, 3, and a lot of my peer graduates did the same, where they double majored and minored in subjects that may seem very different. But it's all about how you connect the dots to then lead to that career path. And I think that's the other important piece to note. It's not just, warm and fuzzy. We've got to, you can major in anything you want. No, the idea is also you get to explore all of these different things, but the bottom line is it's going to guide you to a career. And we're going to help you to get there, to language what you're doing within those majors to get you to that next step, if you will. So Gettysburg offers about 70 different majors across the board: natural sciences, social sciences, fine and performing arts, humanities, and the quantitative area. So when I think of quantitative area, computer science, statistics, economics, management, business, all of those areas. When I think of the humanities, history, religion, philosophy, all of those different areas. English, definitely a popular one. Social sciences, anthropology, sociology, psychology is actually considered a natural science for us. And we are big in the sciences, in the natural sciences. Lots of opportunities for research, lots of opportunities to get the hands-on experiences. And we want to make sure you get both the content knowledge of your major, but also the hands-on experiences, whether that be related to lab work, internships, career-related immersion experiences. We want to make sure you get both of those pieces. So with that being said, I'll go back to my slideshow here momentarily and highlight a few more things. So we mentioned it's a liberal arts college of 2,600 students, and we have students from all over the globe. About 40 states and 40 foreign countries are represented. And the average class size is small. It's about 17. So you really get to know your professors. You really get to develop those relationships, both peer-to-peer and faculty to student. And frankly, as we survey our alumni after, 1 year out, 5 years out, 10 years out, time and time again, they go back to the interactions they had with their faculty members. I see Mr. Wright nodding. I think he agrees with that one. I know, again, speaking from my own experiences, it was really all about that faculty interaction that really guided me towards my major, actually, in the long run. And then we have extracurriculars. Oh my goodness, are our students busy? They do a little bit of everything, but we have, as it says on this slide, over 120 clubs and organizations, and they cover the gamut from athletics to community service. That's really huge for us. Lots of opportunities for service related to various different clubs. Music, I've alluded to that a few times. Great conservatory program that's open to everyone. Don't have to major or minor in music. But it really does cover the gamut of different interests. Mr. Wright, what were some of the things you were involved with as a student?
Yeah, so I was in the marching band for all 4 years. I was in Greek life. What else did I do? I was in the history club, which was just a fun kind of gathering of history-oriented nerds, and we talked about things like who was the best president. It was fun. I'm trying to remember what else I did. I mean, I would consider the fact that I went abroad was kind of like an extracurricular. I was in German club. We drove, I think, 35 minutes to the closest German restaurant around. And we had, authentic German food. But yeah, so
you probably went to the Hofbrauhaus if I had a bet.
I don't think so. It was this weird little house on the side of a road in a town.
Oh, wow. Okay, now I got to figure that out. We'll go offline and answer that question afterwards.
Yeah. But yeah, that was I'm positive there was more, but it's kind of hard to pin down everything from the 4 years.
Well, and I think that's such a good point, though. Oftentimes, I was talking to a parent of a first-year student, and she was listening to another senior presenting, and I do this and this and this and this is what the senior was talking about. And she's like, oh, my student's never going to do that many things. And then before you know it, you're involved in this, that, and the other thing. Mm-hmm. And it either complements your major or it's just something that somebody dragged you into. They're like, hey, you should try this out. I mean, that's how I got to be a radio DJ. My freshman year of Gettysburg, somebody said, hey, I'm a DJ for WZVT. You want to check this out? And before you know it, my freshman, sophomore year, I had a radio station show.
Awesome.
Never would have thought that one. But I think that's the other cool part is there are so many different opportunities to explore, and they cover the gamut. It's not just everybody being an athlete or everybody being a musician or everybody. There's so much overlap of trying different things and exploring different ideas and adding new clubs. I mean, we have now a fly fishing club and a barbecue club, and the students just decided, hey, we want to do this together. And they got an advisor, put together a club, and they got funding for it. Lots of opportunities for that as well. Mr. Wright, do you have any specific questions for me relating to campus life before I just end with that admissions financial aid piece as Gettysburg's?
Sure, yeah. So the first question I would have is what is the average day of a student? Because I feel like it's kind of hard to kind of comprehend how different high school is to college.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And frankly, it can depend on you as a student, and it can depend on your majors too. For example, and I'll just use my own experiences. I had a major and 2 minors. So my course load was very full. So let's just choose a Wednesday. That was one of my busiest days. So I'll choose a Wednesday. And every day is a little bit different because your courses meet either Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. So Wednesday was a busy day for me. My courses were the same Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So on Wednesday, I had a 9 a.m. class. I had another class at 11. And then I had a third class, again, having 3 different areas. I was one of the anomalies. I had 5 classes a semester. Most students have 4 classes a semester. And we consider that a max course load just in terms of the intensity and the rigor of our courses. So my 3 classes on Wednesday, 2 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, which felt like I had a lot of free time in the middle. But in the middle, I was usually catching up on more homework, working on papers, doing reading for some of those classes. Always made sure to go to lunch with my friends. Like that was a big thing. Our dining hall at Gettysburg is amazing. Lunch was it was the thing we did together. Noon, we went over to the dining hall. It's called Servo. That's our nickname. The food is, believe it or not, ranked in the top 20 in the country. So it's not just me saying it. Somebody else has actually rated and ranked that. And it was just a really nice social atmosphere. And frankly, when you're so intensely involved in all your classes, and just have that breather of lunch together was great. And then I was in choir. So my afternoon was, again, that one class and then paperwork, homework in between. 3 o'clock was choir for me. So 3 to 5, I had rehearsal. And then either I was running to grab something to eat, or I had a club meeting because I was in a community service club called Alpha Phi Omega, APO. So I usually had something going on with that. And then I was also very involved with theater. And usually my theater rehearsal started at 7 and went 7 to 9. So then I had a rehearsal. And then at 9 o'clock, I went over to the library, which is 24 hours, and I camped out. I spent a few hours then well into the evening, the wee hours sometimes, working on homework. And that was my typical day. For another student, it could look similar. It could look very different. For many of our athletes, for example, that 3 to 5 hour is oftentimes when our sports are meeting. So there's lots of practices right in that time frame. There's no classes from the 3 to 5 hours, specifically because we have so many student athletes. I had a lot of peers who were science majors, labs all afternoon. My friend Terry, she had science labs. She was a health science major. She was 1 to 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays were her labs. So that was really, she camped out in the science center. So again, it can depend on the student, but while it feels like with only 4, or in my case, 5 classes, like it feels like you got a lot of free time. But in the midst of that time, you're juggling your classwork, your papers, your projects, and then all the different clubs and organizations that you're also involved with, and their meetings and their activities and your commitments there too. So the short answer is you're never bored. And that is very typical of a Gettysburg student. They're involved. They're involved in 1 or 2 or 5 things. That is very much a Gettysburg student. That's a good question, Mr. Wright.
Thank you. And the last question / just kind of statement I have is I think presentation about Gettysburg would be perfect without a talk about Servo Thanksgiving, one of the coolest things we have on campus. So please just tell the students about that.
Absolutely. So Gettysburg has so many cool traditions, some tied into our sense of place and that history. I mean, when you stop and think about it, Gettysburg changed the course of our nation's history. So we do have some traditions like our first year walk. That first week you're on campus, we close off the town and all our first year students walk up to the National Cemetery and hear a reading of the Gettysburg Address right at dusk. It's kind of chilling, actually. I mean, again, this place changed our nation. But the very popular, I would say the most popular tradition, and a lot of our traditions revolve around food, is our Thanksgiving dinner, where our dining hall, it's all about cooking turkeys all day long. The dining hall staff starts about 4 a.m. They make hundreds of turkeys. And so students start lining up in the afternoon outside of Servo, and they have music going, they have games going, it's like an event. And then as you go in and sit down at a table of 8 or 12 with all of your friends, they bring to you, and they being your faculty, the administrators, even the president gets into it with his apron on and everything. And we serve you a traditional Thanksgiving dinner with all the trimmings, the mashed potatoes, the stuffing, the gravy. Oh my gosh, the pumpkin pie. And it's such a cool community experience because we as staff and faculty, we love it as much as the students love it. So we get into it. There's over 100 of us who volunteer to serve the students. Can you imagine, your history professor, your business professor serving you your turkey? And then, it's a fun camaraderie. And then as staff afterwards, once everybody's served, all the students are served, and we wrap up for the evening around 8 o'clock or so. Then all the staff who's been serving, then we sit down and have a Thanksgiving dinner. And that's really cool too. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite Gettysburg traditions, that it was in place when I was a student here in the 90s, and it's gotten better every year. So I'll wrap up with one last slide, and that's just highlighting the admissions and financial aid piece. For those of you who are juniors, soon to be seniors, one of the questions I get a lot about is the financial aid piece and what we look for in a student. So from the admissions standpoint, first and foremost, let's take that side of it. We're looking at you as a whole person. We're looking at who you are in the classroom and outside the classroom, how you've challenged yourself in terms of your curriculum, how you're doing in those classes. We're looking at your extracurriculars, recognizing that COVID has changed a lot. And we know that that looks a bit different right now, and that's okay. We're looking at your service work, your part-time job, the responsibilities you have at home. I know I was a babysitter for my younger siblings, so I couldn't do a lot over my summers, but that counts. That shows responsibility. It shows discipline. All of those sorts of things are things we look for through the admissions process. So that's the one side. But then the other side of it is, Gettysburg is a private school and it is a little bit more expensive. However, we do a great job with financial aid and scholarships. So if you see our sticker price, don't let it turn you off, because quite frankly, there are so many opportunities to have the scholarships, but also the need-based financial aid. It was cheaper for me to go to Gettysburg when I was in your shoes than it was for me to go to my local state school because of the financial aid I received. So this gives you a breakdown of all the different merit scholarships. Once you apply to Gettysburg in your senior year, you're automatically looked at for scholarship. Nothing else you need to do there, with one exception, or I should say two exceptions. The Eisenhower Scholarship for Civic Engagement does have a short application, 3 short essays. So that one does have a little bit extra. The STEM scholarship program that's mentioned below, which meets your need 100%, that is for students who are underrepresented in the STEM area. So first generation in college, minorities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, women in STEM, all of the underrepresented areas in STEM. That STEM scholarship gives you, again, full packaging. And lastly, the music piece, if you're interested in music, well, obviously an audition is included then for those scholarships. So those are the only exceptions to that automatic consideration. And then for need-based financial aid, those two forms, the FAFSA and the profile, are what we look for to determine your need-based aid package. And then we release decisions right around, if you're watching this in February or March, right around now, we released our decisions for all students for regular decision in mid-March in terms of that timing. But that being said, Mr. Wright, have I missed anything? Is there anything else I should have touched on?
I don't think there are any large topics that you've missed. So yeah, I think we're good on the questions front.
Okay. And the last thing that I will add to all students watching this is please come and see us. Whether that be come and see us virtually, we're doing a ton of virtual programs, but also we'll be reopening for our juniors, soon to be seniors, this summer for all visits. Our seniors are welcome to visit now. We are reopened for visits. We have students on campus, so we hope you will come to see us. And let me know, again, as your representative, I try to know the students from my schools who are coming to campus. Again, I'm just simply mlsmith@gettysburg.edu is my email address. Thank you so much, Mr. Wright, for having me today. It was a pleasure seeing you.
Yeah, you too.
And good luck to all of you who are starting or in the throes of this college application process. I look forward to connecting with you.
All right, Mary. Thank you for your time, and I will see you around, students. Oops, I almost ended the meeting instead of the recording.